Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we are continuing Act 3 of our Cao Cao Let's Talk Lore series with Episode 4, titled Betrayed by Chen Gong. So last time, we left off as Cao Cao's armies took a winter break after ravaging the northern half of the Xu province. Now back at home, things were not going as great for Cao Cao, as many of the local scholars, led by a renowned scholar in Bianrang, had started to protest against Cao Cao's rule and sway public opinions against him. And the reasons behind this attack is due to how Cao Cao had conducted his Scorched Earth campaign against Chen, where city after city, town after town were looted clean and massacred in Cao Cao's warpath. Now on the surface, you can understand Cao Cao's cruel tactics here as a form of irrational revenge for the death of his father and clan as they were massacred by Chen. But I think at the end of the day, this was probably just the excuse used by Cao Cao. Sure, Cao Cao grieved for his father's death and wanted revenge. But it is in my opinion that these massacres of these cities also carried a strategic importance. You see, Cao Cao might have been from a rich clan, but at this point in history, he was not rich. His father had all the wealth, and that was the reason why he got killed. And if you remember back in the day when Cao Cao first wanted to start out as a warlord, Cao Song had refused to finance him. Therefore, Cao Cao had no money, and he had to go to Zhang Miao to ask for help. And it was Zhang Miao who recommended Cao Cao to Wei Zi, who was able to finance him for his first army. Now, unfortunately, Wei Zi can no longer finance him because he died at the Battle of Xingyang. And even though Cao Cao was able to absorb this Qingzhou army corps to establish himself, an army of this size is not cheap to maintain, and no one is putting their lives on the line for free. So in a sense, the act of massacring these cities out of revenge for his father's death was simply an extra step to justify all the looting that would take place, as Cao Cao needed the wealth of the Xu province to help sustain his own ambitions. Now, of course, for many of the scholars that resided under his jurisdiction, this transgression was over the line. So this is why in the winter of 193, scholars led by Bianrang, who had been a former administrator in his younger days, took to the streets to protest the rule of Cao Cao, as they also attacked the entire Cao clan for their lack of character, starting with Cao Song for being this corrupt government official that used his position to enrich himself, while Cao Teng was a eunuch. So in the eyes of these scholars, he was beneath human already. And these public attacks on his name, and especially the attack on his family's name, crossed the line for Cao Cao, as he soon held public executions of Bianrang and 9 other scholars, which had other repercussions for him, as it ended up pushing many of his close advisors, who had already been struggling with his decision on the massacre, to start doubting their support for Cao Cao. And among these are 2 figures that are central to our story here, as they are Chen Gong and Zhang Miao. Now, Zhang Miao really needs no introduction, as he himself comes from a powerful clan and went to school in the capital with Cao Cao and Yuan Shao in the younger days, and has supported Cao Cao from day one. But with the execution of Bianrang, Zhang Miao was starting to have second thoughts as well. Now, in terms of Chen Gong, he is a new character to our lore series here, but he is probably more well known than Zhang Miao, thanks to his colorful portrayal in the Romance of Three Kingdoms as an early supporter of Cao Cao, who eventually left him after witnessing his fabled betray the world moment where he killed Lu Boshen's family. Well, first off, this story of Chen Gong is completely fictional, as he did not meet Cao Cao that early, and he was official in the Dong Commandery since the very beginning. And once Cao Cao took over the Dong Commandery, he started working under Cao Cao. And as official, Chen Gong was a very shrewd diplomat, as it was he, with the help of Bao Xin, who helped Cao Cao eventually secure not only the Dong Commandery, but all of the Yan province. But he was also a close friend to Bianrang, whose execution pretty much pushed Chen Gong over the edge, as he will initiate a plot that would almost put an early end to Cao Cao's ambitions. As you see, Chen Gong and Zhang Miao's revenge did not start right away, as they patiently awaited for the spring of 194, when Cao Cao would start his new campaign in April against Tao Tian again. And it was here, after Cao Cao's army marched out for their spring campaign and kicked it off with the seizing, looting, and massacring of yet another 5 towns, that Chen Gong finally pulled the trigger, as he and Zhang Rang contacted Lü Bu, who had been sheltering under Zhang Yang's faction in Henei, directly due north of their territories, just across Yellow River. Now, this time, Lü Bu did not have much of an army, as he had been on the run ever since his assassination of Dong Zhuo, as instead of being rewarded for his role in the assassination as he thought, Wang Yun was unable to hold control of the capital, as Li Jue and Guo Si's forces would soon overrun it and take control, forcing Lü Bu to flee. So first, Lü Bu approached Yuan Shu in Nanyang, trying to join him. But Yuan Shu sensed too much pride in Lü Bu, and these two arrogant men both found it hard to work for one another. So instead, Lü Bu traveled north back to his homeland in the Bin province, only to find Yuan Shao at a war with the local Black Mountain bandits, which plagued the region. And it was here that Lü Bu briefly entered into Yuan Shao's service, as he helped Yuan Shao expand into the Bin province, as the bandits there were no match for him. However, this partnership was rather short-lived, as Yuan Shao also found Lü Bu unresponsive to commands, and despite his success against the bandits, insubordination was not going to be tolerated. So Yuan Shao actually had plans to execute Lü Bu. But fortunately for Lü Bu, he managed to catch wind of this news before Yuan Shao's men would arrive with the command, and he led a small force loyal to him to escape south to Zhang Yang's territory in Henei. Now, if you had been paying attention to the lore series from before, you might remember that Zhang Yang had just established himself there after the Xiongnu tribal chief Yu Fuluo had kidnapped him and helped him establish a force there. And Zhang Yang happens to be friends with Lü Bu, as they both have served under Ding Yuan and are both from the Bin province. So Zhang Yang did him a favor and sheltered him from Yuan Shao. And it so happens Zhang Yang is also close with Zhang Miao, who seems to be friends with everyone. So at this time, when Zhang Miao and Chen Gong were brainstorming ways to stop Cao Cao, Lü Bu became their number one option, especially in terms of martial power. So not long after Cao Cao left for his campaign against Tao Tian, Zhang Miao, as the administrator of Chen Liu at this time, surrendered the entire commandery to Lü Bu, as they invited him in to take over the Yan province as its new governor. Now, you guys might be wondering, how does it seem realistic that everyone just suddenly turncoats against Cao Cao once he leaves and there are no protests or pockets of resistance? Well, there were pockets of resistance, but at the same time, you have to realize that Zhang Miao had incredible sway over this region, as he had been living here with his clan way longer than Cao Cao has. And on top of that, Cao Cao had placed incredible amount of trust on Zhang Miao. In fact, when Cao Cao launched his first campaign against Tao Tian the year prior, when Cao Cao was unsure if his army was even strong enough to challenge Tao Tian, Cao Cao had left his family behind under the care of Zhang Miao, knowing that should something happen to him, he trusted Zhang Miao to take care of his family. And this shows how much Cao Cao would trust Zhang Miao and how much this backstab would hurt Cao Cao, as Zhang Miao would end up leading this coup against him. And the damage here was very widespread and immense, as Zhang Miao also had a brother named Zhang Chao who held some land, and they all turned at the same time. But there were pockets of resistance that held, as there were 3 cities in the entire province that remained under Cao Cao's control as they resisted the attacks of Lü Bu's armies. And these 3 cities were held by Xiahou Dun, Xunyu, and Chengyu. And it was because these 3 had managed to hold on to this little territory that Cao Cao would be able to return in time to at least have a place to regroup, as this was indeed probably the lowest point of Cao Cao's career, as the army's morale had also tanked since many of their families now lived under Lü Bu's control. And for the rest of 194, Cao Cao and Lü Bu's army would face off in a stalemate at around Poyang, until a swarm of locusts numbering the millions plagued the region and wiped out all the crops in nearby land, which forced both armies to retreat in order to secure more supplies to survive through the winter. And it was during this very rough winter of 194 when Cao Cao was finally at rock bottom. And during this lowest point, Yuan Shao would write Cao Cao a letter offering to help him get rid of Lü Bu from the Yan province. But the offer comes with some caveat, as he wanted to invite Cao Cao and his family to come live with him in the city of Ye. Now on paper, this seems like a friendly offer, especially when Cao Cao's forces are out in the cold with very low supplies, and Cao Cao was indeed tempted. But Cheng Yu played a very crucial role here in persuading Cao Cao that this offer is akin to having Cao Cao's family ending up as hostages living in Ye, while Cao Cao would remain forever under Yuan Shao's command. So Cao Cao tightened his belt and toughed it out in the winter of 194 as he turned down Yuan Shao's offer. And in the spring of 195, after 3 successful battles around Dingtao, Lü Bu's forces were finally crushed as he was forced to flee east to the Xu province to join Liu Bei, who had now taken over after Tao Qian's death just a year prior. As it turns out, Tao Qian in his old age had been severely shaken by the damages caused by the war with Cao Cao, as he visited many of the cities after the massacres. And he soon fell ill due to depression and perhaps disease, and died not long after, leaving behind the Xu province to Liu Bei. And while Cao Cao had successfully defeated Lü Bu and reclaimed his province, his armies were beat, and he no longer had the energy to chase down Lü Bu and take on Liu Bei at the same time. So, instead, Cao Cao would take off the rest of the year 195 as he gave time to his armies to rest and recover in place, as most of the land needed to be tended as well to gather supply for future campaigns. Meanwhile, politically, the partnership of Li Jue and Guo Si in Chang'an would soon fall apart, as a new chaos would soon engulf the capital here in Chang'an and would present a golden opportunity for Cao Cao. And to find out what that opportunity will be, please come back tomorrow as we will be ending Act 3 of our Cao Cao lore series with Episode 5 titled The Imperial Protectorate. And that's going to conclude our episode here. Hopefully you all enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!